This is it. This is the very beginning of a series that was soon to become a huge player in the smartphone market. We are talking about the original Samsung Galaxy S. It was released in June 2010, the exact same month Apple dropped the iPhone 4. Interestingly enough, the original Galaxy S package is not only larger in every dimension, but also better presented than the S2 box. Anyway, let's crack it open and see what we got inside. Now, what we've got here was sold to me as a new sealed phone, but judging by the outer condition of the packaging, I'm having some suspicions. And I don't think this is exactly how the original Galaxy S was presented, but you'll get the idea. Just beneath the phone we've got this little box, which of course you expect to contain an instruction manual, which it does. What I wasn't expecting though was a full 80-page colour manual, a throwback to when people used to read. Inside there's a micro USB cable, a 1500 mAh battery, as well as earphones, pretty decent looking earphones by the way, with the Samsung branding, and a charging brick. Of course, not a fast charger here. This all looks pretty old school, and you can tell that design wasn't the priority here. All in all though, a pretty filled out package, lots of stuff inside, and of course we've got the phone, which we've not yet taken a look at. And when you do pick the phone up for the first time, take it out that sleeve, a few things immediately come to mind, which we'll get onto in a couple of moments. But first of all, it comes without its battery, so we need to install that. And now, let's dive straight in. Alright, so as much as you might expect the Samsung Galaxy S all those years ago to have been a very cheap smartphone, it actually wasn't. It was released at about £500, about $550 US, which is the same price the top tier OnePlus 5T was released at 8 years later. And with this in mind, safe to say back then, the value proposition on a smartphone was nothing close to what it is now. It's always interesting to look to the past, and you'll find with smartphones that the further we go into the past, the quirkier these phones get compared to what we're used to. For example, literally every single smartphone you can buy right now charges from the bottom. That's not the case with the Galaxy S. The micro USB charging cable plugs into the top of the phone, into a connection port that is actually hidden by a plastic cover, which is also an equally unusual move because this phone is far from water resistant. The Samsung Galaxy S was pretty much around in the beginning of Android, which means it was released with Android 2.1 Eclair, then updated to 2.2 Froyo, and is now topped out at Android 2.3 Gingerbread. And to give you an idea of just how old that is, with most modern phones when you triple tap the firmware version, it pulls up a silky smooth animation to show it off. With this, it literally pulls up a painting. Now of course you notice this age in other aspects of the operating system. For example, just look at the YouTube logo here. It has been a long time since we've had that. There are certain things we kind of appreciate about our modern phones, which this just doesn't do, like swiping up to open an app drawer. And the control center here doesn't expand or scroll across, or even have an option to open settings straight away. Now, Samsung's TouchWiz OS doesn't necessarily carry a great name, but when you look at its implementation on modern Samsung phones, it's tough to think why, because it's reached a point of refinement. It's only when you move back to a phone like the original Galaxy S that you realize how it crafted this image of itself. It lacks a consistent identity, every part of the OS looks completely different, every icon is a different shape, a different size, a different color, and of all the sacrifices we've had to endure moving back to an 8-year-old phone, the UI is probably the hardest one to swallow. Now, clearly the Samsung Galaxy S is not a powerful phone. We've got a single-core Hummingbird chip with a 1 GHz clock speed. We've got 512 MB of RAM, measly specifications in today's day and age. But at the same time, Android was a totally different ecosystem altogether back then, one that was more suited to accommodate this lack of power. So for example, when you open up the Task Manager, which you have to do by holding down the home key here, you have to open up a separate application in order to just close these apps. And there's not enough power here to display live previews or keep more than 2 to 3 applications running in the background at any one time. More than this, and the phone noticeably starts to chug. What is perhaps more interesting though is that when compared to its older brother, the Samsung Galaxy S2, a far more powerful device, both are pretty equivalent in terms of how fast the UI feels. What the original S loses in power, it makes up for with simplicity. Every animation here is very basic, and it seems like as phones got more powerful, as we moved from the original S to the S2, instead of using all that power to make a faster feeling phone, it was instead channeled into making a slightly more feature-rich, but at the same time slightly more bloatware-rich device. The phone's outer casing is a completely plastic affair, but one that I don't hate because at least it has some design flair of its own. It's got a perforated aesthetic, with a camera all the way in the top left, and strangely enough, a speaker grille on the top right. It shares a lot of design aesthetic with the Galaxy S2, with the latter phone being a slightly more refined, slightly slimmer and also textured smartphone. Nowadays, Samsung phones are often associated with the Super AMOLED displays they offer, and the Galaxy S was the company's first foray into this arena. Soon to be replaced by Super AMOLED Plus on the S2, This was still a revolutionary display at the time, one of the best in terms of colour reproduction, but not when it came to resolution. This was quite significantly trumped by the iPhone 4 with its Retina display, and so side by side with that, this almost looked a little bit grainy. I wasn't expecting masterpieces from the phone's camera, and safe to say it doesn't deliver them. It shoots 5 megapixel photos and 720p video, but the operation of the camera app is still nonetheless smooth. Alright, so that is the Samsung Galaxy S. Really the start of an era. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button down below if you did. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.